So, hello and welcome to Adventurous Advent. I'm Phil.
And I'm Jill.
And this is the final of our 3 Advent courses. I'm going to be a little bit honest with you, kind of up front. We've been trying to work out the best way to do this course. It's been quite tricky, and we've been quite scripted the last 2 weeks, but we're back to Phil and Jill unscripted, I think it's fair to say. Yeah, Jill, is there anything you want to say at the front of this before we?
Yeah, so the reason we've been sharing these spiritual practices, which some of you may have picked up and some of you may not have, is that they come from our participation in Partnership for Missional Church, which we began our journey with other churches who are on the same journey 2.5 years ago over that. It was just 3 weeks after I joined St Catherine's, and amazingly the PCC said yes, we'd go with it. And it's been quite a journey, but it's not been difficult in one sense, but it has in another, because folks will remember we had that away day, we had afternoon tea at the vicarage, and then we had this time of consultation. We looked at the good things in the past, the bad days, the awful things that had happened. We sort of got a picture of where St Catherine's was and how we'd got to where we were. And then we interviewed folks in the community to see what their passions were, what their concerns were. And then we tried to get folks practicing dwelling in the Word. So this has been going on for 2.5 years now, and certainly in meetings that I'm responsible for, I usually will start with dwelling in the Word. Not always, because sometimes we're just pushed for time and we need to get things done. But then this dwelling in the world, I think the concept of that has been difficult to get across, although I feel far more confident now. I think I am doing that habit. The hospitality, we were just about to start launching that and seeking different ways of being hospitable. And as a church, you know, we've got the cafe, we've got some fantastic bakers. You know, we would, if you compared us to other churches, which you never should, but we've got rich resources in that regard in terms of feeding people and actually having fellowship together as well. But there's still challenges in the mindset in what's going up here, and are we really as welcoming as we think we are? And then the announcing the kingdom, so that's recognizing where God is at work in people and telling them so, whether they have faith or not, which is quite a challenging thing to do. And I'm only just beginning really to grasp that one. And then last week we looked at spiritual discernment, which is sort of seeking God's way together for us as a church. Anyway, the point is, I'm very aware that these could just be words, but they mustn't be words. Like, we really want folks, and for us as a church, to start exercising these disciplines. So I just wanted to recap that, but also come clean that it's all a process, and you know, you don't just start a new spiritual habit just like that. No, yeah, we've mastered that one. Tick that one off. Doing that. No, this is a way of life. This is something that we all need to be engaged in. But some of the teaching is a little bit, how can I put it? Why is it difficult to grasp? And I think it's because it feels that it's not a solution. Like we want a solution, and this isn't a solution, it's a process. Phil, you joined us as we were halfway through the process, and you have come to some cluster weekends, haven't you? What has your impression been?
Yeah, it's been, as you say, it's clearly a journey, and it's coming in halfway through. There were some of these disciplines that it was quite easy to see A, what they were, B, how you kind of embed them in the life of the community and in your own personal walk with Jesus. Others were a little bit harder to pin down exactly what they were, and certainly doing this course with you, I've realised there's a lot of stuff. I read the title and thought, I know what that is, and then when I came to actually look a bit deeper, I realised that it wasn't at all what I thought it was. So, for example, in my head, when I saw announcing the kingdom, I thought, oh, this is the bit where we preach the gospel, and it's not that at all. So it's been a bit of a journey for me as well. And if I'm honest, I feel like dwelling in the word came quite naturally. I understood it. I understood the point. I've seen it embedded in St. Catherine's. I think it is really embedded now. Announcing the kingdom is, for me, it's in that kind of middle point where actually I kind of understood what it's about now. I understand, I can see the value of it and how important it is, because actually, when we talk about spiritual gifts, encouragement is an important spiritual gift that God gives to the church, and it seems to me that announcing the kingdom is very closely linked to encouraging each other, whether that's encouraging people in church to see and recognise God at work in them, or whether it's starting to challenge people outside the church to think about how God might be at work in them and begin their journey. And then the last two, the spiritual discernment one and the sixth one, which was kind of it's called missional experimentation in some lists, but I know you had a more cuddly word.
Yeah, well, I changed it to creating Christian community.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, throwing myself on the mercy of the viewers, some of that's a little bit over my head. We didn't do that module at college, so I feel like I'm on a journey with you. I don't know whether I've caught you up, because I feel the church is on a journey, and the church is mastering and understanding some more than others. So maybe I'm where the church is. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I certainly think the steering team, the folks on the steering team, they have certainly caught the vision, but the issue has been, it's all very well for that select group of people to have caught it, but how do we share it with the whole church community? And it will, the idea, it will infiltrate as we start modelling it and expecting others to do the same. I know that. And that really is where the challenge is. But part of the reason we were doing the course at Lent, so we adapted the teaching into that we thought we'll have one topic each 2-hour session through Lent, and at least that will give the folks who come along to the Lent course an idea of or more of an idea of what we've been learning and doing. But then, of course, that was cut short, and so now we're trying to catch up. So it has been a challenge in that sense, although, and also the other challenge is that some of the teaching we sort of do anyway. Like, what's the big deal about it? However, I think being intentional about it, that's what the difference is. So it's sort of about being proactive and pursuing this. It's like setting our minds to just be a little bit more intentional, and to notice, I suppose, which is a word we use a lot, but it's to recognize really where God's at work and what he's doing. And my heart sort of bleeds for God, because he must see everything, and he must see all the opportunities that he puts our way for us to really engage with folks who live around us. And we sort of, well, some people do, but a lot of people don't, you know, and that's why we need to start just being a bit more open, a bit more vulnerable, and a bit more treating others with not as if they're people that, you know, we want to convert, even if we do, because we know that our faith is the way to abundant life, you know. But no, we don't do that. We engage with them because they're fellow human beings, and we can learn from them, and catch their passions as well, and join in with what God has done in them, even if they don't recognize it. It's that, and I think that will come more naturally to some people than others, if I put it like that.
Yeah, and I think the other tricky thing is it's actually quite countercultural in lots of senses. So I was reading through the notes you sent me on the sixth spiritual discipline, and there was a line in there about, can't remember the exact line, but it's like, there are not problems that we are the solution to. It's about going in and working alongside people. And I was sitting reading that and thinking, when I first started working in direct marketing, and I bought all the marketing books, and like page 1 of marketing is, the way marketing works is there's a problem, you find the solution, you tell people about it. And that's what I did for a career for 5 years. And actually, I very often kind of viewed my faith through that. There's a problem, sin, there's a solution, Jesus. I tell people about it. That's the mission of the church. So it's quite countercultural in that slightly corporate, what's the purpose of us kind of way. But also I wonder if it's a little bit countercultural in terms of the way the church has become, as we've seen, increasing secularization. There was a time when the church was the centre of the community, and there were all these fetes and fairs going on, and you engage with the community that way. Whereas as secularism has increased and we've lost touch with lots of people, sometimes there's a bit of a bunker Christianity that's kind of set in, and we kind of engage in, I used to call it at university, guerrilla evangelism, that we kind of rush out of the safe space, the chaplaincy, into the accommodation and say Jesus, and then we'd run back into the chaplaincy. So there's all these different cultures, secular cultures, traditional Christian cultures, that are all slightly unused to the kind of thing that PMC is talking about, which makes it uncomfortable, and it challenges a lot of maybe deep held assumptions that we didn't even know we had, really.
Yeah, so when I was taught how to share my faith, you know, God made the world good, we humans messed it up, Jesus came to save us, accept Jesus, you're saved, and that was it. But then when, you know, and I wish life was as easy as that, and maybe it is for some people, but I think it's far more complicated, and there are far bigger questions that people are asking. And this thing about developing relationships and being in relationship, because my theology says, you know, it's not just enough to be saved. What are we saved for? Are we just waiting for the day when Jesus will come again and we'll all go to heaven? You know, is that what it's about? And if it is about that, well, then just kill me now. No, the whole point, Jesus saves us for a purpose, and we are part of his redemptive plan for this world. So we join him in his mission to redeem the world, and, you know, we make the contribution that we can. And I think that is what the motivation is behind the Partnership for Missional Church. It's working with others, really, to make the world more in line with God's will for how it should be. And whether other people have Christian faith or not, it, in a sense, that's immaterial. Well, it sort of isn't, because you know that a relationship with God, you know, really does matter. But the point is that relationship should just shine out of us anyway. And people, once they start engaging with us, should surely wonder what that's all about and give us opportunity to share our faith in a natural way as we listen to them as they share their beliefs. You know, let's not be afraid of taking an interest in what other people base their lives on. You know, I think we've been very wary about that. And the sixth spiritual discipline, creating Christian community, we haven't told you all about, because I think you'll probably just go and bury your heads in the sand at this point, because I think it comes out of, you know, we need to be practicing these other disciplines that we have shared first, so that we are living the life that we proclaim we are doing.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds really really sensible, and I think there's a really important question that you've kind of raised, that actually, does Jesus make a difference now, or are we just waiting to die for him to make a difference? It was,
Yeah.
I was doing the youth Bible study yesterday, and we looked at John 10:10, where Jesus says, "I have come so that you may have life and have it to the full." And that raises a really important question. That actually, for me, if it turns out there isn't a second coming and we're not going to heaven afterwards, but everything else is true, would I still want to be a Christian? And I think the answer's got to be yes. I think it's got to be, actually, Jesus came to save us in the here and now and to give us life and give it to the full. And actually, for me, life to the full, spent in a bunker, not wanting to engage with anyone that doesn't hold exactly the same theology as me, is not really life to the full. It's kind of life in an echo chamber. And actually, if we want to enjoy the life that Jesus has given us, then actually engaging with other people, listening to them, valuing them as Jesus valued them. If people have an intrinsic value, then we should be with them to help them explore life to the full, without having to give them the whole theology in one whack, and get them to sign dotted line so that we can all sit in our bunker and wait for Jesus to come again.
Yeah. I think the other important thing, which is part of it, is that do we believe that God is redeeming and transforming the world? You know, do we believe that God is active in people who aren't part of the church? Now, you know, some people might be really offended that I even vocalise that question. But of course he is active, but so often we treat folks as if he isn't. We treat folks as if we know much better than them. But God is beyond a knowledge of what is written in the scriptures. You know, he is beyond even a knowledge of what we can see in created beauty and things. You know, I do believe the Holy Spirit gives all of us opportunities to respond to him at different points in our life, you know, and that's, and I can look back at my life before I became a Christian, and I know God was right there beside me in it. So I think the challenge is recognizing that God is at work in other people and valuing what he is doing in them. And I think as we develop these practices, for example, so dwelling in the word, we could actually do with anybody. As we said when we launched it, you don't have to be a person of faith to practice dwelling in the word. You know, and exposing folks to a passage of scripture where, you know, the word or the phrase that strikes them gets as much airing as the word or phrase that strikes you. That opens up a really open discussion where we can discover together what God might be saying to us. I mean, the individual would have to be willing to do that, but why not, you know? And then just recognizing the opportunities God gives us day by day which I think is the discipline of examine, reflecting on the day. Again, everyone is different, but my days are just so full. Sometimes I forget kindnesses that people have shown me, and they went out of their way to do something. And at the time I was blessed, and then I just get on and sort of forget. And no, I want to give that kindness due thanks to God for that person being so good to me. And I think noticing, we do need to grow in that. Well, in all the disciplines, really. Phil, you're looking very pensive.
No, not pensive. I'm just thinking I'm just listening to what you're saying, and there is something in there, isn't there, about actually, are we willing to encounter God outside of church, basically, is what this boils down to. Actually, are we willing to see God at work in someone's life when they pop round to give you something thoughtful? And it may not be that they're a Christian, it may not be that they've had this lightning bolt prod from the Holy Spirit, but it doesn't mean God's not at work in that action and not giving you a blessing through that person. And as you say, there's no way of knowing that God's not starting to work in that person, and in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time they may become a Christian. But we don't know. It's not our place to decide what God is and isn't doing in someone. It's up to him, really, and we just need to be open and alert for spotting him and being ready to encounter him.
Yes, yeah. I remember when I was at Bible college, John Drain, who's a New Testament scholar, came to talk to us, and he shared the story of how he and his wife having invited 3 other couples to come for a meal, and they had a lovely meal together. And then as everyone was leaving, they sort of stood in the hallway, and folks were sort of, because of the way the conversation had gone, he sort of realised that they were sort of waiting for something. And anyway, he just suggested, it sounds so corny, but he suggested they all held hands and he led them in prayer. And he said it, and they were not Christians, none of the 3 couples were Christians. But he said, they were standing on holy ground at that time, and the prayers were real, it was a moment. And I think that's what this process sort of is trying to help us to do, is to be a bit more bold, just change the mindset of how we view others. Folks are interested in God, and they do want to know, and they are spiritual beings, and we must let them be, and take all their questions and engage in them as best we can. And it's very humbling, all that, isn't it, really? I think.
It is, and it's a life's work, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What another observation we've made with these disciplines is that they don't say anything about prayer, and prayer and fasting. They're spiritual disciplines which every Christian community or individuals should be engaging in. They don't make much of that, which has always been something that I think, that's not right. Like, it should be part of it, shouldn't it? And I think the assumption is that anyone sort of engaging in them would have been a paid up, partner in prayer in any case. That's what I think. Did that occur to you at all, Phil?
Yeah, it did occur. It's part of the getting more hazy that actually, like, dwelling in the word it's very specific. This is a specific method for engaging with the Bible, but actually if you take a step back and make it a bit more, say, dwelling in the words, reading the Bible, praying and fast, could see how you could have actually the first discipline is that we pray and we read our Bibles. And this is one way of reading the Bible. I could see how it would fit quite naturally in there, but it doesn't explicitly say about prayer anywhere, and that is quite a glaring omission.
Yeah, I suppose yeah, I don't know. Maybe we need to take that up with them. So one thought that came to, so I just thought I'd share this, talking to somebody from, well, the thing is, I don't want to reveal their identity, but somebody I know who's in a professional position, who is an atheist. We were chatting and he said, Jill, there's a verse in the Bible that I think is very appropriate for these days. And he says, and it's that one about Jesus shining in the darkness. And so then I said, oh yeah, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has never put it out. And he almost blushed, because I'd got it. But he was the one telling me that was the verse for this season, for this coronavirus season. And so that's an atheist. Yeah, but maybe God is working in him. And that's my prayer. Yeah. But those are the sort of dialogues we need to be having with others, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's funny. I think it's partly because we feel like we're in this culture where people don't know much about Christianity and stuff. But I think there still is that residual knowledge that's with people. I remember I was having my last job before I went for training. Part of my job was running a catalogue that sold Christmas cards for charity, and I was having an argument with my manager about the ratio of Christian to non-Christian cards, and she said, "Oh, well, that's got a dove on it. That's a Christian card, isn't it? It's got a dove on it." I was like, "Really?" Like, well, didn't Jesus say, "I've come to bring peace"? And I said at the time, I went, "No." He said, "I've come to divide brother against brother," but actually, thinking back, he is the Prince of Peace, isn't he? So actually, I was thinking of one verse, and I'm the Christian, I know the verse, but actually, she was clearly thinking of a different part of the Bible, and actually, she had something to bring to that conversation to make me think about the place of doves in Christmas cards. It's and maybe the dove Christmas cards are saying something spiritual to people.
Well, I hope they are, yeah. But the other side of that is, people have a little bit of knowledge, but they don't really have a grasp. And the church, as I've said before, just feels a little bit irrelevant to most people's lives. They're not lying in bed thinking, shall we not go to church this morning? They just don't think of church, and they don't think of God. I had an experience when I went to the local dump, and I'd forgotten, but I had my dog collar on, and this chap came to help me unload the car, and he's, you vicar? And I said, yeah, and it was at Easter time, and he said, oh, will you say one for me, love? And I said, yeah, I'll pray for you. And then another of his mates was sort of coming up and saying, oh, you gone religious or something, to the other chap. And he said, well, he says, you can always do with a bit of help. He says, anyway, Easter's coming, isn't it? And the other chap says, well, what's Easter then? And he says, well, that's when Jesus was born. And anyway, the thing is, I didn't correct him because I just, like, it was just banter, do you know what I mean? But it makes me sad that we assume that folks have at least a basic knowledge, but not everybody has. And I think when I came to faith, someone said to me, well, everyone has a Bible at home, don't they, lying around? And I said, no, I haven't got a Bible lying around. You know, I didn't have a Bible in my home. My parents were, you know, lovely people and stuff, but I didn't have a Bible. So the vicar's wife came and gave me one. But, you know, I'm over six, well over 60 now, and the generations have passed, and most people don't. And, you know, that Christian heritage, which those of us who are a little bit older, it's just, we cannot assume it. And that's why we need to start relating to other people. I thought it might be helpful just to go through this presentation, which we were giving as we began the Partnership for Missional Church process. And it's really an overview of where the church is at the moment. So ask the question, where are we now? Finding our way in this complex age. So I think less than two, is it? Oh, I'm just quite, I think certainly less than 10%. I was going to say 2% attend church regularly at the moment. The church we remember, this is where the Christian story is well known, Christian symbols are familiar, being Christian is the sort of default, it's normal. The Christian faith is taught in schools almost exclusively, no other faiths. People expect to come to church for special events. Chaplaincies were almost always Christian, whereas now in prisons you get folks of all faiths. Sunday was that special day, and mission was something that takes place a long way away, such as in a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina. The church in the beginning, so the New Testament church, this is the situation for them. Christians were a despised minority. There weren't any church buildings. They worshipped in people's houses. There was no central church organisation. And before anyone was baptised, there was a period of induction, and love was demonstrated for one another and the wider community. There was loads of disagreement, loads of conflict, but the church grew rapidly. The Church of Christendom. So, you know, when it's not Constantine actually. When he became a Christian, Christianity became the official religion of the empire. And the emperor made the church sort out its differences, and the church became, you know, very structural and hierarchical, reflecting what the situation was in the empire. And everyone had a church to go to. Most people assented to the basic beliefs of Christianity, because if they didn't, they'd get fed to the lions. No, that was before then, sorry. Wealthy men and women sponsored churches and religious houses, and the church provided hospitals, schools, charities of all kinds, and mission meant converting people beyond the fringes. Do you agree with all that, Phil?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good. And then we had this sort of secular divide where I suppose really post-war that became more and more prominent, that you know, folks either go to church or they don't go to church, and they live a different sort of life. And now, you know, society is changing beyond recognition, really. We still have an Anglican church in every parish, and many people are deeply attached to it, but by no means all. The church is deeply involved in education, but the role is changing. We still have bishops in the House of Lords, but their presence is recognised, seen as being problematic. And yet, when after the Civil War, you know, it was the bishops in the House of Lords that led the government, that advised the government on, you know, its moral judgments. Whether that's right or wrong, and whether Henry VIII was right or wrong, you know, we can't go there, can we? Chaplaincies are still mainly Christian, but increasingly multi-faith. I think most of the prison services I know, they are multi-faith. The number of people identifying as no religion is rapidly increasing. I think in statistics I looked at just yesterday, not realizing I was going to do this, but 59% of folks in the UK in 2020 identify as being Christian, and 25% identify as having no belief system whatsoever. I was very surprised. I thought that was a very high percentage of people identifying as religion. Anyway, so here we are. Here's the church now, today. Our story is unknown. Our symbols are unfamiliar. We always need to explain when, you know, we use symbols. Our language is incomprehensible. I dared to take Bishop Stephen up because he's launched this initiative that every church should teach catechism, which is, you know, the creeds of the church. It's like the learning of the church. And what is catechism? So, you know, if you're on the inside, you might know what that is, but why resurrect that word? Why not just say to people, we want you to know the basics of the faith, which is what it is. Anyway, our context is diverse. Our history is problematic to many. Folks see Christianity as being very divisive, and, you know, if you look at the American Indians, or if you look at the Crusades before then, you know, however, I would counter that by saying actually communism has been responsible for millions more deaths than any religion. However, you know, the church must be accountable for the heinous crimes it has committed, you know, because it didn't respect other people or their traditions. Our opportunities are immense, so you could say our situation now is not dissimilar to the first century situation, and our attitudes are crucial. The church is changing from a vicar and a building and services to faith and community and action, and I think people would identify with that. So faith being at the heart of life, that's what the kingdom of heaven is all about, that people are living by faith with God at the centre. So Christendom is coming to an end, the future's unpredictable. How does that make you feel? Bewildered, anxious, thwarted, glad, excited, or other? That was what do you call a whistle-stop tour, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good presentation though. Sorry, I'm slamming up to you now, but it's a good summary of where we are and how we got here. And I think, and to kind of pick up on that question at the end, how are you feeling? To me, all of the above, I think. But to try and end on a more positive note, I think excited is potentially a good feeling to have about the here and the now, because you've talked about Christendom and being in this kind of post-Christendom world. Actually, when I was growing up, I went to a church school, and not many of the pupils alongside me were Christians. And actually, if you try to talk to them about Jesus, they're like, yeah, we know it, not interested. Whereas now, actually, we've got people that don't know about Jesus, and it is new information for them. And actually, they are interested because he is interesting, and maybe we've actually managed to cut some of the shackles of Jesus being associated with the status quo, getting people to come into line and do as they're told. And now maybe we've got our edge back a little bit, and we can be a bit edgy. And because Jesus is edgy, and that's one of the many wonderful things about him.
Absolutely, and I do think it's a really exciting place to be in, because we're in this season where the church, you know, we either make or break. I think the church structures are breaking, and that is probably a good thing. but it enables mission and reality and the God that we know to be true, to break through all our funny cultural assumptions that just get in the way of that living, freeing, liberating relationship with Jesus. So we better stop there. Next week, we'll be continuing with the Jesse Tree readings. This is the last of the Advent courses. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me or Phil know your thoughts. I hope we've provoked you a little bit and helped you to understand more of what we've been trying to do. And anyway, I'm pretty confident that some of you certainly will let us know. So,
take care. God bless. We'll see you soon.
bye.